Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the UFOcast. We are now over a quarter of the way through watching UFO. I'm Luke and...
I'm Michael.
And we are talking this week about the Dalotek Affair.
Not at
which
all
obviously
anything to do with Daleks.
Well, that's the first thing we have to say, isn't it, Michael? Who came up with that name? And do we think it was a deliberate play to make it sound a bit like Daleks?
I think it might be, but also apparently it was originally called something like Crater 232 or something.
Or whatever the name of the crater in
or
the
whatever
episode
the
is.
number, yeah.
That sounds incredibly plausible, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I've found no reference to it anywhere as to why it's called that. But as a company, they probably were racking their brains going, we need a name of a company for the film, for the series, and it needs to not be a real one. So What can we find? So I'm guessing that's the closest they've came up to. So should we give them a benefit of the doubt in a kind of Nicholas Parsons kind of a way?
I think we can give them the benefit of the doubt. Last episode I was talking about the fact that I came across a thread online about doing an interview with the author of this episode.
Yes.
And apparently he didn't come up with the name. That was the one bit of information I gleaned from this thread, because the thread abruptly ceased, having kind of been quite promising about possibly interviewing the guy. So if any of you are listening were involved in that, if any of you did interview Rurik Powell, and that interview did appear somewhere, please let us know, because the thread referring to it sort of petered out.
Actually, if you interviewed him and had a dictaphone of it running, I'm sure we can tidy it up and we could even put it on. You never know.
You never know.
If you've got anything like that, please contact us. That would be great.
It would. So, we have another episode set predominantly on the moon. I was thinking about this, Michael. We've got these 26 episodes of the show. What can the format do? So we had the first episode was we're setting up what the premise of the series is. The second episode was here's some human drama surrounding the alien stuff. The third episode was here's the aliens blackmailing a person. The fourth episode was here's the outside view of Shadow. Paul Foster becomes a member of Shadow. And then the fifth one was what happens if somebody gets stranded on the moon. Last time we looked at, what was your phrase again? Adventures in Human Resources.
Yeah.
And then this week we're back to the aliens have another plot to get past Shadow. And in this case, it's we're going to fly in a bunch of UFOs to distract you all. And whilst we're doing that, we're going to drop this device into a crater. And you're going to think it's these other people who are up on the moon with you, and we're going to get you.
Yeah. Basically, the invasion by committee thing that's going on with the aliens have gone, right, let's have another random plan. And this week's random plan consists of inserting a radio jammer so that moon base can be cut off.
Yeah, well, it almost works. It's not a bad plan. It's quite a good plan.
It's
by
not
the aliens,
a bad
I feel.
plan, but if there hadn't been somebody parked down the road, someone that the people on Moonbase could blame, it would have been a case of, there's been an alien attack. There might possibly have been something landed in a crater. There might not. And look, we've lost radio control. But it wouldn't really have been that much of a problem if all they were doing was losing radio if they hadn't got noisy neighbours.
Yeah, well, so this is one of these things where you go, how much do the aliens actually know? And did they specifically target their meteorite to land beside the Dalotek installation because they knew that would be who Shadow blamed?
Yes.
Or not. It's never actually clarified because we don't really get to see things from the aliens' point of view. We just have to make a guess at what they're doing. But as it is, it's quite a successful thing, and we have this conflict, to use last week's episode's title, between Shadow and the Dalotek people.
Yes.
And I think this episode, and I would like your opinion on this, Michael, this episode does a bit more in world building than some of the previous episodes have done, because we start to learn about what has happened to the world since 1969, when this was made, what they were kind of projecting into the future. We've obviously got the fictional scenario of aliens are real, but then we've got the real thing of we're just landing on the moon. There's an Apollo mission every 6 months. What are we extrapolating into the future? Well, we're extrapolating that Shadow are going to be on the moon, but we're also extrapolating the fact that all the minerals on the moon's surface are going to get mined within a decade.
Bizarrely, that's my. There's a speech, and I've got lots of notes as always, but they are all over the place. So this is one from further down. So I'll just skip forward. Right. There's a speech by Straker where he starts off saying, "Private finance has no business on the moon." And as someone who's kind of interested in space exploration, I'm thinking that's kind of cool. Yeah, they've got it's a national park. Yeah, we're not, because obviously, did you know that if you go to Mars, you're not allowed to take anything that's got any organic structure. You can't have rubber tires on your vehicles because you don't want to introduce DNA into a strange environment. Right. So,
interesting. Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was at, and as I'm watching this, I'm going, that's really cool. That's really foresighted. And then the next line is, because all the minerals are gone. Yeah, we've already been up and we've already nicked everything. So the moon's basically a husk now. And let's not even go down the road of it being an egg, ever. But
no.
But it's that's basically it. They've been to the moon, they've nicked everything, and they've gone. Now, obviously, being a sci-fi fan, you'll have seen the film Moon.
I have seen the film
with
Moon,
the man who isn't Zaphod, and it's a glorious film.
It's a brilliant movie.
It's a brilliant movie, and they are mining. Is it helium-3?
I think so. Yes.
Right, because in Red Dwarf they've just found a moon full of helium-7. But that's obviously the sci-fi equivalent. So it's a massive source of energy, and that's what they're mining on the moon. But obviously in 1969, nobody's even heard of that element. So it's just basically a rock. And if you're going to find stuff on the moon, it's basic, because the moon was apparently created when a planet crashed into the planet that became Earth, and large chunks of it. So the moon's basically made of large bits of Earth. But stuff's fallen on it.
I think that's the current theory, isn't it? Yeah.
That is the current theory, that the moon and the Earth are basically made of the same sort of stuff, only it's got no atmosphere, so therefore it's more barren because it's been exposed to the solar winds and stuff.
Yes.
So that's the real-world science end of things. And it's moving away from us at the rate of 1 centimetre a year, which I think is kind of cool. It's an extremely, extremely slow episode of Space 1999, that one. but that's the sort of thing that keeps me awake at night, knowing the moon's moving away from us.
Yes.
So, I don't know where I was going with this, but it is kind of weird that I started off going, that's really cool. It's a national park. You're not allowed there. And then it's implied that there's no one else on the moon at all, apart from Shadow Moonbase, which is just called Moonbase. They don't go, oh, hello, this is the Shadow Moonbase calling. And it's like the Dalotek building's up the road. It's not like there's, say, a Mexican space station further around the corner, or anybody else is doing any geology anywhere. That's it. It's basic, because they just go, hello, this is Moonbase calling Dalotek, which means they're the only moon base around. Yep. So do the people on Earth know that there's a moon base?
Well, so this is a whole potential issue with the episode, in that we know from previous episodes that Straker was in the military, but that as far as the world is concerned, he's now a film producer, right?
Yeah.
We know that. But in this episode, he talks to Blake, and Blake calls him Commander Straker. So Blake, who heads up Dalotek, knows that Straker is running a military moon base.
Yeah.
So
now he knows it's a military one, but he doesn't know that it's a military one to defend against aliens.
No, they don't know that. But at the very least, you would expect that Straker's cover would be applied uniformly across the board for anybody. So why is it that Straker is the one that is the face of this military moon base, when that's essentially blown his cover? They don't know that he's the head of an alien defense organization, but he's clearly not a film producer if he's running a military organization on the moon.
No, I completely get that. I do. That's not. Yeah, I've got no arguments because you're right.
No. Yes. But that aside, it is interesting that you've got, and there is a later episode which I actually confused in my head with this one. There's another later episode, isn't there, where there's some kind of moon vehicle that is heading towards moon base and is going to crash into it.
Oh, that's something like the pressure seat or something, or the hot seat.
I can't. But they're basically they've had an oxygen leak or something, so they've gone a bit loopy and they're not changing course. So there's clearly other people on the moon as well as
the responsibility seat. That's the one.
Oh, that's the one. Yes. That's the one where Straker's off with
on holiday.
Her from the prisoner. But we'll come to that episode when we come to that episode. But so we don't know exactly what the full picture is with the moon. But as you say, Straker seems to be in the position of, we're on the moon defending the Earth from aliens. Okay, he's not telling people that, but
no, just we're on the moon. We're a military base, but we're an international military base, possibly watching over the Earth.
Yes.
That might be a good cover story for that. So it's like we're kind of not international rescue, but we're here to make sure that nobody on Earth has, say, a killer satellite or something like that.
Yes,
which would make sense. People would kind of go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. We'll have that as a secret organization." People might, that would be like the open secret. So this would be shadow within a shadow. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Yes, that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah.
But he clearly thinks there shouldn't be anybody else on the moon doing anything, and he's a bit annoyed that these Dalotek people are up here. We don't quite know what the Dalotek people are doing, apart from using this big thing called the geoscanner.
Yeah. They're doing geology.
They're doing geology with a machine, yes.
Yeah. Right, sorry, can I just say, we've missed the single most important bit of this whole story out for me.
Go on.
Which is that it's got three beginnings. It's got a weird documentary style beginning where the man who answers the phones at Shadow is interviewing someone.
Yes, we've got that beginning.
Then we've got the interview. Then we've got the part in the restaurant with the most questionable staff on Earth.
Yes.
Right? And then after that, we've got the wibbly, with the really bizarre black and white cuts. I'm sure we'll cover all of these. With the bizarre black and white cuts. And then after that, it's a flashback to On the Moon with its jazzy opening music where he tells the story of 6 months earlier, which I know is going to mess with your chronology of when in the 80s this is set as well.
Oh, well, I'm not even going to attempt that because I don't think we get any dates in this one, so it's difficult.
Yeah, it's just 6 months earlier, so that's it, right?
It's at least 6 months after he joined Shadow because he's relating something 6 months ago.
Yeah, and he's in charge of... sorry.
And he's in charge of Moonbase. Should we take these in order?
Distracted you from the point you were originally making. Yes, if you want.
No, I think I'd finished making whatever point I was making. So we'll take them in order. The very beginning episode, and you've briefly touched on this before, I think, we have this interview with Dr. Strange's.
Yeah,
it's a brilliant name.
Dr. Strange.
It's a brilliant name to start off with, like being called Stranges and then becoming a doctor, unless, of course, he changed his name. Because this is a real person, right? As far as we've been able to ascertain, this is a real guy who was a proper UFO nut.
Yeah.
And
some websites say he was an abductee as well.
Oh, okay, right, okay. So
but he was also
experience.
One of the branches of Christianity as well. And used to tour the States doing talks on either of those topics.
And he has a website which looks like it came from the 90s.
Yeah, and he's no longer with us, so we can't interview him.
Yes. But, so the interesting, and obviously there will be something in the production notes, Andrew Pixley will know, but from the way it's been shot, obviously there's a close-up on him, and then we get cutaways to Ford, as you said, the guy who answers the phones at Shadow. So one assumes that he wasn't necessarily doing an interview in character. Presumably they asked this guy some questions, filmed him, and then edited the bits of his answers they wanted to into this episode to use. But he's obviously giving answers that are genuine in relation to the state of UFOlogy in 1969.
Yeah.
And they've obviously kind of gone through and gone, right, where is a vaguely related word for Straker to pick up on at the end of the episode?
Yeah, true. And
what did you think about this aspect of the episode?
The thing halfway through when he says, "Oh, that interview you used to do." Now it does imply that the guy was basically some sort of journalist, or even, God forbid, some sort of podcaster. where he would go around interviewing people who know about flying saucers. And then the secret organisation went, you know about flying saucers, you can answer phones, come on in. And that's how he joined. I think that's implied.
I'm gonna try and find the bit in the episode because I think he's wearing a military uniform in that interview. So I'm just going to try and find that while we carry on talking.
Well, it's the first few seconds, yeah.
Yeah, so I think he was probably a military person, and for whatever reason, as a military person, he was doing the interview with Doctor Strange's. I think that makes sense. I like your idea of he was a podcaster. That works well.
Or a videographer, yeah.
Or yeah, he could have been like me.
Yeah.
Well, if so, everybody, if I suddenly disappear, you'll know I've been recruited by a secret organisation.
Shadow 2017.
Shadow 2017. Yeah, that'll be me. But do we think that this aspect of the episode works, or does it feel like it's been shoehorned in?
Well, I think it makes the bit later on, when it gets referenced, make more sense. Because if it was just kind of dumped on us, it would be, and forgive me for all this, but it's Puddle Girl in the last series of Doctor Who. It's like, oh, by the way, this has happened, and you'd go, what? Okay. If it hadn't been mentioned, that kind of thing, it's Chekhov's gun again, but it's framed in such a way as to make you go, right, I don't think the episode would have worked at all without that information at the beginning.
But the thing is that it doesn't make any difference to the plot, because
you're right.
The whole thing is that Moonbase and Earth are cut off.
Yeah, and so Moonbase come to the same conclusion independently of each other.
Yes, exactly. So Straker and Ford figuring out what's going on Earth makes no difference to solving the plot, because they can't communicate to the moon anyway. And so it just seems to be an entirely contrived bit of padding to fill the episode out. Whether there was a financial reason for them including this guy in the episode, I don't know. That would be something that, again, anybody who is more cleared up on the production could tell us. But just purely from an episode point of view, it just feels entirely unnecessary for this to be in there.
No, I get it. I do. It just seemed really weird that these guys are genuine. I suppose it's the equivalent of having Patrick Moore in an episode of Doctor Who or something like that. It kind of just or Brian Cox or someone of that sort.
I suppose that is a good parallel. Yes. So Ford is wearing a blue suit, which may or may not be indicative of anything. So yes, I think we'll go with your theory.
Right.
Ford was a podcaster back in the 60s when those things didn't exist.
Yes.
Whatever the equivalent of a podcaster would have been.
A documentary maker.
Documentary maker, yes. And he's making this film.
So that takes us then to the questionable restaurant.
Yeah. Yes. Where they're all sitting kind of between scaffolding poles painted brown and scantily clad waitresses.
Without any form of uniform. Yeah, but they're not actually all wearing the same thing either.
No.
So you don't know that they're all scantily clad in the same way, which makes it even more questionable. Yes. Is it? Have you seen Office Space, where they're all wearing their own bits of flair? Is it that kind of thing? And I don't know.
I don't know.
Look, you're talking to the person who once went to a pub in Whitley Bay, where bizarrely the staff didn't wear very much. And just thought, my God, these people all need jumpers. We're in Whitley Bay, for God's sake. It's ridiculously cold. Have you any idea how cold this is? And then we just went somewhere else. It was just not on. It was like, please, can someone just wear a jumper? I'm here for a drink.
I thought you guys were notably hardy when it came to the cold weather.
No, we are, but there's levels. And also, for a start, I no longer live in Newcastle. They let me go because I owned a coat. They stopped me at the border and they said, right, do you drink heavily? And I went, no. And they said, do you own a coat? Yes. They went, here you go, sir. Have your passport? You can leave now. So that's why they let me out, because I own a coat. It's fine. It's something I don't like to talk about, but let's move on. So you've got sorry, the dodgiest cuts to black and white I have ever seen. They put me off this episode with something rotten. The first time I watched this, I was like,
it's a very odd directorial choice, isn't it?
Yes. That's a very nice way of putting it.
And I think it's the fact that it just happens a kind of handful of times at the beginning, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then we have the sort of, here's Doctor Strange is in black and white, and then there's Paul Foster's bumped into Jane in the restaurant in black and white, and then he's basically like, right, I know that woman, but she doesn't know me. And Alec Freeman is like, why not? And you're like, why doesn't Alec know about this? But maybe, I suppose he wasn't on the moon, was he? So he didn't necessarily know what she looked like. But you'd think that he doesn't then need to tell Alec the whole story of what happened, because surely Alec knows, given that this was a major kind of shadow incident. But anyway, it's an interesting framing device. We get to do the kind of...
So, the woman who comes in, who looks like Sarah Pascoe's mum, and she...
Ooh,
what?
Interesting. Because she does look vaguely familiar, but I've looked her up and I don't know her from anywhere else. But that is a very good parallel.
She just looks like Sarah Pascoe.
Yeah.
I know for a fact Sarah Pascoe's mum wouldn't be, given I've seen Sarah Pascoe talk about her mum, I can't see Sarah Pascoe's mum being this person, but she definitely has a family resemblance.
So, for our international listeners who don't know who Sarah Pascoe is...
British comedian.
She is a comedian who occasionally is like the token woman on Mock the Week and things like that, and turns up on radio for panel shows as well. And I think she's quite funny.
She is, yes. My wife went to see her at the Halifax Comedy Festival a few months ago with a mate. I would have gone, but it was my turn to be stay-at-home dad that night. So, so it's not that I don't like female comedians. That would be ridiculous.
No. So he happens to bump into her and her boss in the restaurant, and is like, I know her, but she doesn't know me.
Oh, that's who she's with. That makes a lot more sense. Because I was just going, so, Paul Foster, going to muscle in on an actual date. That's nice.
I'll just check, but I'm pretty sure that it's him.
Either way, it doesn't matter. It just seemed not particularly gallant.
Yeah, no, it is. It's her boss. She's out for a meal with her boss.
Not fair enough.
But hey, I mean...
But even then, it might be a date.
It might be a date, yeah.
Yeah. It's the 70s. There's a lot of that inappropriate behaviour going on anyway. Sorry.
Yes.
The mock 80s, yeah.
But also, at the very end of the episode, when we kind of get back to that, and he goes over and chats to her...
Yeah.
And he basically goes, I bet you're a geologist. And she's like, how would you know that? You're like, well, how is he going to explain that chat-up line?
It is the world's most stalkery chat-up line ever.
It is, isn't it?
Is it going to work as a chat-up line, even to a geologist? Hey, you're a geologist. Do I look like one? Have I got rocks spilt down my dress? What? It's... Ooh, no. No, it is very stalkery.
Let's talk about their relationship, because I've just got to that what possibly my favourite point in the episode is playing whilst we're talking here, which is the amazing Joan Harrington and her faces of amusement at Paul Foster flirting over the telephone.
Oh, no, the flirting over the phone, because it's a fixed landline they've got. So it's the only telephone in the entire programme with a cable.
Yes, and I've paused it on the immortal line. How the devil do we eat fettuccine through a quarter-inch space visor?
No, fettuccine. What's the pronunciation? Had they never heard of it before? I think neither of the actors had heard of pasta fettuccine, and I know it sounds weird in a Geordie accent, but fettuccine. It just sounds like they're really taking the mick.
They're trying to do an Italian accent really badly, yes.
Yeah, and that is particularly shoddy flirting as well, to be fair.
Yeah, but it works, doesn't it? Because
I think both of those people are... you'll have come across them in real life. Particularly good-looking people, or worse, people who think they're good-looking and don't have to try whatsoever, right? And I think they've gone through their whole lives being attractive and not actually bothering to come up with anything that involves a personality. So they can just go around going, fettuccine. It's awful. Maybe I've got a very bad opinion of some people, and that says more about me than anyone else. Yeah.
No, this is an aspect of this episode that I definitely wanted to talk about.
Yes.
And I think you and I were probably in a similar position here, but it's one of these things of going, well, I'm not a beautiful person in the sense that these people are. We're not Riker from Next Generation. We're not Paul Foster from UFO. You know the type.
Yes.
I mean, Captain Kirk as well, for example. The character in the series who is most likely to, at the very end of the episode, end up in bed with whichever female guest star they've got that week, or in this case, kiss and then have a kind of weird fantasy spinny aroundy with lighty thing.
Yeah, it's all a bit rohypnol-y, but we can discuss that in the end. Yeah.
And that's obviously because she's being given an amnesia shot, so she'll forget the whole thing.
We can discuss retcon in a minute, yeah.
We can. But let's just talk about this whole romantic subplot thing, because it's not just UFO. Lots of shows do it. Again, I'll refer to Star Trek Next Generation because I've been watching that recently, having never seen it first time round. It's just the speed with which people fall in love in TV shows.
Oh, completely.
I just don't know whether, because my experience is incredibly different, and I've never been that kind of person who seems to be able to kind of fall in love at the drop of a hat, have a kind of brief romance, and then the next week is. But I think that is part of the format of the TV show, isn't it?
Of TV shows in general.
This is just,
and it also gives people false expectations of real life. Yeah, that is also my experience of life. Yeah, you just don't do that. But I suppose if you've experienced things in real life, you kind of know that that's not real, and you kind of just buy into it because it's a TV show. You know that in a soap, people don't behave the way that they do in real life. But I don't know, is that a sign of maturity or just disappointment in TV?
I don't know. It could be any number of things. Because there is an element of going, of when you watch stuff, going, this doesn't seem very believable. But then at the same time, there's an element of going, well, my limited experience of life and humanity could be making me think this is unrealistic, when actually this is the regular experience of most other people. There's a sort of paranoia sets in.
There is a certain level of paranoia, and I think that's designed to keep people in their place. But I honestly believe that narrative structures do lend people to us. It doesn't matter. That's a whole different podcast for a whole different time, right? I know it genuinely is. So, getting back on topic, I'm not completely convinced by their relationship at all. That's just me. Possibly you as well. That's fine. We can both live with that. But it does fit with the narrative. But then at the end, obviously she's given a mind-wiping drug. But they do seem to have some sort of small relationship in the moon base before they get given the drugs.
Yeah.
And then she gets it wiped, and then she forgets stuff. So at that point, because obviously I'm watching UFO for the first time now, it's retcon from Torchwood. It's the biggest thing for me. Now, there's also an episode, because you've mentioned Next Gen, I'm going to mention Voyager. And are you familiar with Voyager?
Even less so than
right. Okay, there is an episode of Voyager who I can't find the title of, but I'm sure there's people listening shouting it as soon as I describe it. Chakotay, the second in command, meets someone on board the ship, and she throws her arms around him as though she's known him for years. He doesn't recognise her at all, whatsoever. Right. Yeah. And what's basically happened is they've had an episode, and then he's been retconned, and he's had his memory wiped of them two being in love. She didn't bother wiping her mind, so basically she's the Paul Foster, Chakotay's Sarah Pascoe's mum, right? So
right, yeah.
Sorry, oh no, I will say it properly. I will say it with Jane Carson, right? That's Jane Carson, right? Yes, so that's the way around it is. Now, because in Voyager they've taken a slightly different approach in this storyline, in this setup, what they've done is they've said that this relationship doesn't work the second time around, because Chakotay has to fall in love with her again. And what made them fall in love and have the relationship in the first place was the circumstances, was the thrill of what was going on at the time. And because it's different now, then the relationship doesn't work. And obviously it's a one-episode thing and she never comes back. So that fits in with TV narrative, but also it's clever in the sense of not quite what... You know what I mean? Am I making sense?
Yes. No, you are making sense. And
so it's interesting to see it the other way around.
Yes. And now you've mentioned that, there are other things that there are parallels with there. You've also got Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where both of them agree to have their memories wiped, and then they meet again and fall in love again, and the relationship pans out and then goes wrong again. And the idea being that these two people are destined to fall in love each time, but it to all go wrong. You've got Back to the Future, where Marty prevents his parents from meeting in the way that they originally did.
Yes, and you've got a lot of Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, and then by having them fall in love in a different way, he actually improves their relationship.
Yes.
So that he has cool parents when he gets back to the future. Unlike those things we just talked about, though, this episode doesn't give us that aspect of the story because it ends before we find out what happens with the two of them meeting again.
It implies that there's going to be some sort of happily ever after for them that involves him just keeping a massive secret about the real purpose of Shadow Base on the moon.
Yes. Because I think actually the catalyst for their relationship going deeper, in the brief sense that it does, is the fact that they do get to find out what they're doing on the moon. Because the episode sets up this conflict between, here's Dalotek, they're doing their whatever scientific investigation that they're doing for the Dalotek Corporation. So there is profit involved. They're obviously trying to discover something that they can sell, whatever, but there's a sort of scientific aspect to it. And they're obviously annoyed that the military up the road are kind of throwing their weight around. Yeah,
because they just think, it's the military base on the moon.
It's the military.
What's the point of that?
Exactly. So you can kind of understand the antagonism there. And at the end, there's sort of like a thawing, at least as far as she's concerned, because they're like, oh, we're really grateful that you're here saving us from the aliens.
Yeah, and the blokes seem to be impressed in the sense that that their spaceship, their moon base is nicer and round, which doesn't show up on camera.
Yes.
Which is a massive shame. They spent so much time building a lovely round set, and you can't tell.
Yes, exactly. But I think the dynamic in the relationship changes once she finds out who he is, and so it's sort of like, oh yes, you're my hero kind of thing. That's the vibe I got from it.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see. Most of it is like the conversation over the phone, though. That's what's building up the relationship.
Yes, is the let's flirt down the landline, which obviously now seems remarkably antiquated.
In all fairness, I've been married to my wife now for 10 years, and at the beginning she lived quite a distance from me, and we did used to communicate on the phone. So it just kind of made me harken back to those golden days of long chats and things. So I get that. I can relate to that.
Well, I can to an extent, but my wife and I dated over Skype to a large extent. So we had
Skype
see
as
each
well.
other. Yeah.
But early on, there was a lot of phone calls, and of course, it's a lot easier if you're out wandering around town, not to Skype. But I suppose people do FaceTime now and things like that.
That's very true. Yes, that's very true. Anyway, so I think we waffled enough about
we have, but
the romantic
you know what?
subplot of this episode.
It is romantic, but the logistics, it's like we've never mentioned this amnesia procedure at all, and then all of a sudden Schrager, halfway, about 10 minutes in, goes, if they have to come in, remember to use the thing that you know about, because we made a point last time of saying that obviously the guy in charge of Moonbase is the person who's read the notebooks, the rule books, most recently out of everyone.
Yeah.
Right? But he's being reminded by Straker, and he doesn't at any point be sarcastic towards his boss and go, yes, I know, I read the notebooks last week.
Yes.
At no point does he do anything like that. So, yeah, he obviously knows what he would have to do, is wipe their mind with the amnesia procedure. But it's all a bit bizarre. I'm not a big fan of wiping people's memories at the best of times, but I see why they're doing it.
Yes. I mean, I have to say they go along with it remarkably.
Well, apparently, in the book, in the novelization, They're just told that it's injections to counteract the rapid decompression that they've suffered.
Sorry. A novelisation.
Oh, yes. Look at me going to a website. Apparently, there are 2 novelizations of UFO, which are gathered, are like 2 or 3 episodes pushed together. And apparently, because I've not read the books yet, but I think I might, the difference in the narrative is that they're not told that they are amnesia drugs, but they're clearly told that they are here on TV.
Yes, and I suppose that's clearly something that whoever did the novelization felt was important to fix.
Yeah,
because I think I don't know about you, but if you stumbled across a secret organisation that was covering up UFO stuff,
yes,
and they told you they were going to have to wipe your memory, you wouldn't just kind of acquiesce straight away, would you? I think you would at least have a bit of a...
I'd do what Gwen does in episode 1 of Torchwood and make lots of notes to myself.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Or knowing me, I'd probably end up recording some sort of podcast or video message to myself.
Yes, like you've had your memory wiped. This is you. I mean, it's like
Total Recall.
Total Recall. Yes, I was thinking exactly the same. Arnold Schwarzenegger's message to himself. What else do we want? Oh, well, so we've got the Dalotek crew themselves.
Yes.
We've got the sort of older guy. We've got the beautiful love interest, and then we've got the young, kind of hot-headed Phil Mitchell, who obviously is not like Phil Mitchell from EastEnders.
Okay. Is this a bit of casting I really didn't spot, or are you just drawing parallels?
No, I'm just saying the character's name is Phil Mitchell.
Oh, right. Got you.
Yes, yeah. So, interesting fact.
Sorry, I've also got it playing in the background, and I've only just noticed that on Straker's desk, which is fairly full of paperwork, the video phone is labelled video phone. Why do you do that?
I don't know why you do that.
Sorry, yes.
Anyway, no, interesting fact. I live just round the corner from an old house that used to be owned by the guy who played Grant Mitchell in EastEnders, whose name Ross Kemp. Yes. We're just waffling now, aren't we? Right.
Oh,
anyway,
we are, right.
So,
back on topic. There's a character in the episode called Phil Mitchell.
No. There's a character called Phil Mitchell.
Yeah.
Who's played by... Well, we'll come to him in Doctor Who Watch, because he was in an episode the other week playing a completely different character working for Shadow. Now he's playing a character who works for Dalotek.
Right.
All that waffle was to basically ask you the question, Michael, is did you like the Dalotek crew? Did you warm to them? Do you think they were a believable kind of unit?
I like the fact that they
didn't
like the people of... they didn't like the military on the moon. I found it believable that there was a bunch of people on the moon, but there wasn't a lot of them because the minerals had gone. I didn't mind them. I minded the name of the company, the bloke in charge. There was one moment I did like where Straker talks to the guy on the moon on the video phone, and the bloke who runs... Okay, I'll spoil it myself now. Barusa, where he talks to his people at Dalotek. So the bloke who runs Dalotek talks to his staff and says, right, the military have been on the phone, be nice to them, do as they say, don't cause any trouble. And Straker phones up his subordinate on the moon and says, right, I've spoken to the private enterprise, why don't you just go and rattle their cage and put them in their place? Right? Which isn't good management at all. Right?
No.
And it's actually the work of a fool or an idiot or some other word you can use. But it's not very nice, because it's like, here's an example of good management. Yes, there's military there. Why don't you just be nice to them and go along with them? And bad management, yes, why don't you just shake them and keep them in their place for no reason? It's just fool. The guy's an idiot. The idiot Straker.
Sorry, did you just go ahead Straker? An idiot?
Well, I think he's an emotional dwarf. He really does need a lot. He needs some therapy. That would make a great episode. You could make it with clips, so it wouldn't cost very much.
Well, I mean, I think we get to next week. I think
Indeed,
we get to
do,
some of the traumatic
the reasons he's the way he is. Yeah.
the reasons the way he is, and the reasons why that's only going to get worse as a result of next week's episode. And it's one of these things where you go. So the recent Star Trek Discovery, there was this whole subplot which sort of got forgotten about because the Admiral got kidnapped by the Klingons briefly. But this whole thing about the fact that Captain Lorca should not be in charge of that starship because he's unstable and he's a warmonger and whatever, or whatever you think of him, there's definitely he's got definite issues, and I guess the same is true potentially of Straker in that he is a damaged individual, and sometimes, like you say, the way that he manages people is not.
It doesn't. It's
good
not
practice.
helpful. It's not helpful because he's always shouting at the bloke who runs the phones. And yet in this episode, he invites him into his office like he's known him for years and gets on quite well.
Well, he clearly has known him for years. I think that is true. That's implied.
But also, Freeman's in there, right? Freeman's in the episode itself because he says,
yes,
tell the people on the phones to keep checking the moon base. And Freeman reminds him and says, you told them to do it all constantly half an hour ago. Go and get some sleep.
Yeah.
So, obviously, Freeman's actually aware of the storyline, but he's forgot that he's given this order, and he's got really good staff who know what they're doing. That's why they're there. Yeah. They just need... Hey, we've all worked in places like that, where the management, you just need to leave you alone to get on with the job because you know what you're doing. We've all been there. Or have we? We have.
Yes, I think... micromanagement, yes.
Yes, that's a very good way of Straker's micromanagement techniques. But perhaps there should be an Ed Straker management guidebook that would be available.
Well, basically, if you want to be a manager, don't do what Ed Straker does.
Yeah, or managing your secret governmental society the Ed Straker way. And there'd be a PowerPoint. I'm so off topic. I apologise to everyone. I need to say the word fettuccine again.
I think it's relevant. Yeah. Oh, I'm just watching the episode, and they're like, let's have a shot of her legs.
Oh, there's. You know what? It's got to a point where I don't even notice those anymore, and that's not on.
What? Because we're just going. It's of its time. Let's forget the things of its time. Yeah.
That is almost where I am, and that's not healthy. Because the minute you stop commenting on it, you accept it, then that's not good. Yeah. Right. So, is there anything else you need to mention?
I don't think so.
Yeah. There was one thing that was mentioned in Dr. Strange's chat, where he talks about General MacArthur talking about the war. Basically, prepare yourself for the war between planets, and apparently that's a bit of a misquote.
Is it?
Yeah, it's like our logical next step will be something like we prepare ourselves for a war between worlds, but not a war of the worlds. That's a different thing. But it's not quite the same thing. But I will find out the actual comment for one of our feedback episodes. So, but it's just a slightly different thing. It was basically, why don't we just stop fighting each other, and then we could always just gather forces in case. Rather than, nope, there's aliens coming. It makes more sense. Let's not get rid of the military. We might need them, but we just might need them, just in case. Rather than, nope, I know there's aliens. Let's all gather up our skirts and get ready. It's not quite the same thing. So anyway, sorry, right. So for me, that's it. Apart from the, that's it. So is what's left?
So, well, it's just there's one more thing which I've just seen because I'm watching it again. So there's that very common technique in filmmaking where if you want to show that somebody's falling asleep, you have the shot of them and you get the actor to kind of flutter their eyelids, and then you cut to a POV shot of them looking at whatever they're looking at, and you slowly rotate the lens and the camera goes out of focus. Right?
Yes.
And that's what they do, but for some reason, I know exactly why it goes wrong. There's a lamp behind Foster.
Is that the one that comes strangely into focus?
Into focus. Yeah. You've got the shot, which just looks like a standard film shot. He's in focus, and there's a lamp kind of out of focus in the background. But because they've done this whole kind of thing, she's falling asleep. Let's rotate the lens. Let's rotate the lens. Oh, he's out of focus, and the lamp is in focus, and it completely ruins the.
I'll tell you what. You could seriously make a very odd film like that. if you had an argument between two people, but you just focused on things in the room instead, and the people themselves were out of focus, you can make a really nice piece of experimental film. Okay, so
yes.
Are we finished now? Does anyone who anyone who's not interested in Doctor Who Watch or Prisoner Watch, you are excused. You may leave the podcast.
No, because we've got Anderson Watch. We've got Anderson Watch first, because as we said last episode, we're gonna talk about directors as well, and because many of the directors who worked on UFO had directed stuff for Gerry Anderson before, I think we will start with Gerry with Anderson Watch.
This is Alan Perry.
Alan Perry. So, what did Alan Perry do previously in Anderson's world? Do you know anything about him?
I don't, but I'm thinking he's the person that I saw in the documentary, so I'm thinking he's a Thunderbirds director.
Yeah, no, actually.
No, I am wrong.
So but yes, so at the stage of Stingray and Thunderbirds, he was a camera operator.
Right.
So he worked his way up through the camera department, as people often do. But then he ended up directing from Captain Scarlet onwards.
Got you.
So he did Captain Scarlet, Joe 90, and Secret Service, and then directed some of UFO. And I think he would have worked on the Thunderbirds movies as well, in between Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet. So he's a stalwart of Gerry Anderson, having started on Stingray, camera operating on those. And it's one of the things where when I first watched UFO and saw those opening credits, and then the names like Gerry Anderson and Reg Hill and Tony Barwick and stuff cropped up, you kind of go, oh, I recognise those names from his puppet shows. And so many of the directors, you go, oh yeah, no, I recognise that name from the credits of previous Gerry Anderson things. So that's Alan Perry. So yes, if you're not interested in Doctor Who, yes, you can now switch off, because we're going on to Doctor Who Watch.
But you don't have to. You can stay.
You don't? No, please stay with us. Please stay with us. So I said to you last week, when we finished recording, I think, that there were 5 people to watch out for in this episode, and I know that you've spotted at least one of them because you mentioned him earlier. So fire away with your Doctor Who picks of the week, please, Michael. 5?
Oh, I haven't got 5. I've definitely got Barusa, head of the Time Lords, President Barusa, or Cardinal Barusa, depending.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's President when it's played by this actor. And
yes,
in the 5 Doctors.
Very good. Yes. Can you name the actor?
No, I can never name the actor. I'm terrible at that.
So this is Philip Latham, who, as you correctly said, played Blake, the head of Dalotek, who basically gets to sit in the office on the end of a phone to Straker. And he was the 4th incarnation of Barusa. As you rightly said, he's Lord President at this point, having previously been played by Leonard Sachs as President, and before that as Cardinal John Arnott, and why his name has gone completely out of my head.
It's fine.
No, but it's not, because I should know who played all 4 Barusas. Or is that the plural of Barusa? Barusas? Yes. Barusai.
And of course, if you got the answer, that would be Barusai bonus.
Possibly saying, yes, I'm gonna have to look.
I understand. You know what? I totally get it. It's fine. I'll just chat. So.
No, it's fine. Here we go. Angus Mackay.
Can I just say, for anyone listening, he used a book there, not the internet.
Yeah, I did. Yes, I used my program guide off the shelf.
It didn't even occur to him.
Well, it was easier. It was easier.
Exactly. Right, so that's number 1.
So we've got him.
I've got a feeling.
And you said that you thought you'd spotted somebody else.
One of the people who were helping out, one of the Dalotek staff, the male Dalotek staff, I thought looked like somebody out of the Sontaran experiment.
Ooh! So, you're so close and yet so far away at the same time.
Okay, that's fine. I am more than willing to be there.
No, so because Sontaran is the right word, but that's not the right Sontaran story.
Okay.
And in fact, both of the male Dalotek staff are Doctor Who actors.
Right. Oh, was one of them... hang on. Before we jump down this road, one of them wasn't Gulliver, was he? No,
No,
that's fine.
no,
I'm thinking
we
of somebody else.
did not have. But no, but you're right. He does vaguely. He's vaguely similar to Bernard Horsfall, but no. So let's deal with Phil Mitchell first. As I said, so he was played by David Weston, who a couple of weeks ago rescued Paul Foster from the surface of the moon. So a couple of weeks ago, he was playing an unnamed shadow operative. But this time, he's playing Phil Mitchell, who works for Dalotek. And as we said before, he was Birok in Warrior's Gate.
Yes.
And Nicholas Muss in The Massacre. And so once you... Because the character of Birok was so heavily made up and prosthetized...
The time-sensitive teddy bear people.
The time-sensitive lion-like creatures. It was one of those things where I was going, is that him? And then you look at photographs of him and you go, yes, no, that is definitely him. But it's such a brilliant makeup job in Doctor Who that you wouldn't really know that this was the same guy. So that's the young guy, Mr. Phil Mitchell. The older guy, who's the one that you thought you recognised from somewhere, is an actor called Clinton Gren.
Right.
Or Grain. I don't know how you pronounce his surname. And he has 2 Doctor Who appearances. Once where you can see what he actually looks like, and then once, and you will know immediately which Sontaran story I'm talking about because of his height, once he appeared as a Sontaran.
The 2 Doctors.
So, striking the 2 Doctors, now that you know who he is, do you recall his appearance in Doctor Who where you could actually see his face?
I absolutely do not.
Okay. So, interestingly enough, he appeared in the story preceding his Dalotek co-star. He was the head of the village in State of Decay.
Oh, right. He was the person, the person who looks after Adric.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. Because his son has already been taken to power. So he and his
I would have been guessing for hours on that one.
Yeah.
I think I used up all of my sci-fi credibility with my guess from last time's Star Wars thing.
Which I'm still completely blown away by the fact that you got Red Leader.
I've no idea. Anyway, yes.
So we've got 2 more. One of whom I mentioned last week because he appeared last week as a completely different character, or at least a different character with a different wig. So this was Alan Tucker, who was the lunar module pilot who dies in this episode because he can't land on the moon because the computer isn't working, and so he and his co-pilot get blown up. So he was Lartep, Joe Grant's love interest in Planet of the Daleks.
Yes.
And as I said last week, he will have one more appearance in the show. So having died, he will come back to life and play a different character. So we've got one more actor to identify. I'll give you a clue. He appears exclusively inside Moonbase in the control sphere.
Right. And it's a man.
So think back to the story. We've got Paul Foster. We've got the 2 ladies who are running things. We've got Joan and Nina. Who was the other person in that control sphere? And did you recognise him?
A pilot?
No.
Sorry, I can't even picture any of the men.
So there was a techie guy who was trying to figure out why the radios weren't working.
Oh yes, yes.
And he was him.
Obviously, the IT department is in a completely different sphere, and they only phone them every so often.
Yes. So he was an actor called John Breslin, or Breslan if he was French. I don't think so. And he played Captain Munro in John Pertwee's first story, Spearhead from Space. Right.
Well, no, completely didn't register at all.
Completely didn't. No. And I have to say, there is an alternate universe somewhere where he didn't leave after one story, and he was the Captain Yates figure throughout John Pertwee's era. But we didn't get that universe. We live in this universe where he was just in that one episode.
What was the character called?
And never appeared. So he's basically Captain. He's basically the Captain Yates character. He's called Captain Munro, right. And he's basically the Brigadier's guy on the ground, running around trying to figure out what's going on at the cottage hospital.
I can't remember. Does he get killed?
No, he doesn't.
Right. In that case, I can feel some fan fiction
that's the
coming
thing.
on.
That's the thing. He survives, and that's why I said because he's essentially the prototype for Captain Yates. He's perhaps a slightly more buttoned up, less jolly character than Yates was, but he basically occupies that position in the story. And then in the following episode, you get Paul Darrow playing the captain.
Yeah, who doesn't make it out the episode.
Who doesn't make it out the episode. And then I think in Ambassadors and Inferno, you don't really get anybody playing that role until Yates then comes along in
Yates
Terribly
is all
Autons.
extra new season.
So that's the end of Doctor Who Watch and the end of another episode discussing the Dalotek Affair.
Not
Dalotek,
Daleks.
whatever it was. Not Daleks. Next week we are going to be discussing episode 8, A Question of Priorities. And I generally don't like it when people say, Stephen Moffat's a big one for this, of going, you're going to cry. But this episode Question of Priorities is genuinely upsetting, or it could be genuinely upsetting for some viewers. And I would say particularly if you have suffered the bereavement of losing a child, and that's a bit of a spoiler, then I would think twice about watching this episode, because that is part of what the plot
It's the sort of
deals
thing
with.
that there would be a sign up at the end that says, if you've been affected by this program, phone this number.
Yep. And having not myself lost a child, because my daughter is only 5 months old, but having been a close colleague of a couple who lost a child in almost identical not identical, in similar circumstances to what happens in this episode, I get it's a particularly difficult one from that perspective. And so it's just a warning to you if you are watching UFO for the first time that the next episode deals with some pretty grim stuff, and you might want to skip
Let's face it, UFO is pretty bleak at the best of times, and it's possibly the bleakest of episodes. Possibly.
Probably yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, on a not really uplifting note.
Yes. Be seeing you.
you.
You have been listening to the UFOcast with me, Luke, from Tmudwup.
And me, Michael, from the Tin Dog Podcast.
Please get in touch with the show, let us know what you think and any feedback you might have at ufocast@yahoo.com.
Or on Twitter at UFO_cast. Available on Stitcher and iTunes. "2018 brings with it 3 brilliant conventions, all held at the Derby Quad. ShadowCon 2. The UFO convention will be on June the 30th, 2018. Hooverville, the best little Doctor Who convention in the world, is on Saturday the 1st of September, while Big Finish Day is on the 3rd of November 2018. All tickets are available from the Derby Quad website." That was the Doctor Who Tin Dog Podcast, available on iTunes, YouTube, Twitter, RSS, Vimeo, and across the internet. Doctor Who and its associated properties are all copyright and trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Why not become a supporter by visiting patreon.com/tindog. Contact the show on tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.